Hi everyone, I'm Sophia and this is my week 11 reading. So in week 11 we talked about how changes in magnetic flux can induce an EMF in a coil or wire. So first we discussed how a falling magnet can induce an EMF in a current in a coil made of N loops. As the magnet falls closer to the coil, the magnetic field becomes stronger and stronger, which means that the magnetic flux through the coil is increasing. And by Lenz's law, the EMF induced in the coil is equal to the negative change in magnetic flux through one loop of the coil times the number of loops in the coil. This is also equal to the change in the magnetic field through one loop times the area of the loop times the number of coils in that, or times the number of loops in the coil. So this EMF induces a current, which creates a magnetic field of its own. And this magnetic field tries to counter the change in magnetic flux created by the falling magnet. So the total magnetic flux remains the same. And also we can calculate the magnitude of the induced current by dividing the EMF by the resistance of the coil. Okay, so from there we naturally transition to talking about the magnetic field in solenoids, which are basically really long current carrying coils. And the total length of the coil is much longer than the diameter of one of the coils. So the current flows around the solenoid in the circular wire, which produces a magnetic field inside the solenoid. The magnetic field will point in a straight line, like that, in the direction determined by the right-hand rule. And the magnitude of the magnetic field inside the solenoid can be determined by mu naught times the number of loops times the current divided by the total length of the solenoid. Now, outside the solenoid, the magnetic field is approximately 0. Okay, and after that, we examined a scenario where we were trying to find, there was a loop surrounding a solenoid, and we were trying to find the magnetic flux through that loop. So since there's only a magnetic field inside the solenoid but not outside the solenoid, the only source of magnetic flux is the solenoid itself. Yeah. Okay, and finally we talked about cases where you can induce an EMF and you can change the magnetic flux by changing the area rather than the magnetic field. So like you can make the area larger or smaller, and so this changes the magnetic flux because the magnetic flux depends both on the area and the magnetic field itself. Okay, and so just like before, this would induce an EMF in a wire, and this EMF would generate a current, and then this current would generate a magnetic field that tries to counteract the changes in magnetic flux that happen through changing the area. And this week's content was, I think, a lot more clear than last week's content. And part of the reason is that we had already done a lot of these things in class during week 10 because we had gotten a little ahead in class. So we'd already covered changes in flux through a coil and magnetic fields through solenoids and, rotational EMF. And I think watching the edX videos kind of helped me solidify some of these concepts and understand them better. And then additionally, I went outside of class and watched a few YouTube videos to clear up some topics that had confused me, such as motional EMF and solenoids. I'm not entirely sure how to relate this week's concepts to biomedical sciences, but I still found this week's content interesting. It seems that, keeping things constant is a recurring principle in nature. In biology, cells like to keep things at homeostasis, and here in electricity and magnetism, things like to keep the total magnetic flux constant, so you'll have induced fields that try to counteract the changes in magnetic flux to kind of keep the total magnetic flux the same. Alright folks, that's it for me. Have a good week, and thank you for watching.